Welcome to episode 96 of Destination Linux. Destination Linux is a podcast made up of opinions by four allegedly somewhat intelligent-ish, maybe, guys discussing our passion for Linux. I'm Michael, and with me today are my friends Ryan. How are you doing this week?
I'm doing awesome.
Nice. Zeb, how are you?
Not too good. I've got a bit of a cold, but we'll soldier through.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you for powering through. And I'll also welcome to our newest permanent host, Noah.
Hello, good to be back.
Nice. And
it is cold here. It's 4 degrees is the low today. I'm not kidding. It's the low is 4 degrees tonight.
I do not envy that whatsoever.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you powering through that as well. So, Ryan, what have you been up to this week?
So I've been having some fun. Actually, this is because of you, Noah. I was on your Mumble server for the Ask Noah show this week. I was kind of hanging out there, and I decided to become a part of the community instead of just a lurker. And I thought, I haven't spun up a Mumble server in a long time. So I have a server on DigitalOcean that was TTRSS feed for getting all the news and stuff that we cover on Destination Linux, and decided, let me try to go ahead and throw Mumble on there as well. It's amazing how powerful and diverse these little droplets are, because it ran perfectly. It was able to set it up. It took less than 5 minutes to get the whole thing done. Like, it's
also a testament to how well the Mumble server is written too, right?
Oh, absolutely. The Mumble server, DigitalOcean, the whole gamut. So I spun that up, set it up, got in there. Of course, I don't know if I'm going to make it public or not, but it was just fun. I like going through these things and saying, hey, this person has this. Let me go see if I can go do it and see how long it takes and all the effort and stuff. And I love seeing things that are that simple, because to me, that drives more people to be experimental and try things without having, 1,000 terminal commands and going into config files and having to change them and all that. None of that happens with a Mumble server. It's literally 5-10 minute process. You can have one set up. And it's just very little powerful tool, too, with the administrative rights, the groups you can create, the texting, the voice chat, all of that stuff. So that's what I was up to. I think it was a lot of fun, something to do. Plus moving, as you can tell, because everything is getting empty. Saying goodbye to this house.
He's selling stuff so he can get his AMD Threadripper.
That's right. That's what I should be doing.
Nice. So, Zeb, what have you been up to this week?
Well, I've been having fun in games with Fedora. I tried the KDE version first, but was having a few problems with NVENC, and I didn't know whether that was my fault because I did things in the wrong order. So I hosed that and then put XFCE on, and bingo, that worked first time. So I then did something really stupid that I'd done to Peppermint before, but I wondered if it would work with Fedora, and I just threw Cinnamon Desktop on top. And surprisingly enough, it's working really stable, and everything that I need is working. So yeah, it's a nice distribution.
Nice. So Noah, what's been happening in your neck of the woods?
Like I said, it's been really cold. The low tonight is 4. So I've been trying to stay indoors as much as humanly possible. I worked at 14:50 a.m. out of St. Cloud this morning, and now I've got the afternoon to spend talking Linux with you guys. And then obviously, not that it's directly related to this show, but Ask Noah is now an independent program, and so excited to see what levels we can take that to next week. And thanks a lot. If you guys don't know, if you haven't heard or listened to it, make sure to check out the four of us did an episode of Ask Noah. We called it the Linux Brain Trust, or no, we called it Stump the Chumps, but we're going to go with Linux. We're going to go with Linux Brain Trust, and you can check that out. We took questions and answered them, and I thought we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was it was a great time.
It was very, very good, yeah.
So let's go ahead and move on to the next section, which is the emails. So Noah, could you read that for us?
Hey, Destination Linux crew. First, let me start out by telling you how giddy I get every time I see you release a new podcast, especially the ones where Michael isn't involved. I almost exclusively listen to you on my way home, as it brightens up my day every time. Your chemistry is amazing, and you offer a fantastic combination of information and entertainment. I'll accept that Michael guy. At the ripe age of 31, I started my apprenticeship in system administrations. It's never too late, and my job got me into Linux. I've always been pretty tech savvy, and I've tried Linux very early on with some early version of Ubuntu. I'm now part of a 3-man team, and I manage about 200 servers and an abundance of VMs exclusively that are running on Ubuntu.
Nice.
I have a completely I've completely abandoned Windows from all of my private PCs as well. My question to you is, how do you alleviate the fear of the command line in your everyday computer user? Thank you so much for everything you do, and please keep up the work. Once I can afford to support you financially, I will not hesitate for a second to support each and every one of you except for Michael. Greetings from Germany, Martin.
That's the greatest email ever. It was read
It's good,
by the way.
Yeah.
Too. I mean,
I felt like there was some extra pieces put in there that were not
there wasn't.
necessary.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think the greetings from Germany. I think. Oh no, that's in there.
Yeah, and I think
Red S.
I think he only has 190 servers, not 200. So you might have, you might have overdone it a bit there.
Yeah, he did say
So,
about 200.
This is an awesome email, and one of the reasons why I just absolutely loved it was the fact of managing 200 servers here. Now, I have I don't know, 4 little virtual servers that I spin up for my own, pleasure of playing with different things. No, I'm sure you have quite a few and stuff, but 200, that's a whole business. That's a lot of servers there to manage that he's able to do here successfully with Linux without any issues. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. I think that the question is really interesting though. Is how do we alleviate the fear of the command line from the everyday computer user that we experience? And that's an interesting question that I don't really think there is an answer, because at the moment there's still sometimes. I mean, you have the GNOME software stuff like that in Ubuntu, but okay, Noah, what were you saying? What would you say?
I would say that one of the greatest things about the Linux command line, what is scary to people about the Linux command line, is not understanding specifically what you're doing. A lot of times it's monkey see, monkey do, and so we just blindly copy and paste these commands into the command line, and I think that leads to a lot of anxiety and fear, because you're not really sure what's going to happen, and if everything goes the way you expect it to, then you wind up with a product and you really don't know. That's best case scenario. You don't really know how you got there. And worst case scenario, something bad happens to your system and you don't know how to undo it because you didn't understand what screwed it up in the first place. So I would say the way to alleviate fear of the command line is to dig through every single command that you're going to run and understand what those commands do and what the ramifications are of each one of those commands. And in doing that, I think what you'll find is you'll begin to embrace the command line and start to say, hey, you know what? I understand. Because I know, Michael, you kind of think this way, and I do as well. Is when I go to do something in the graphical environment, I click on install. In my mind, I know that underneath that pretty little green button is sudo apt get install, whatever. So that's what I would say: is understand what each one of those commands do in their entirety, and I think that will eliminate the fear.
Yeah, I was going to add to this so there was a period of time when I was running a shop with my dad down in Florida. We had a small computer shop, and one of the things that I spun off as a teenager was my own business training people how to use computers back then. And the command line fear, even the fear of computers back then, because a lot of that generation didn't grow up with computers in their homes, was they were afraid they were going to break something, right? There was this constant fear that, oh my God, if I go in here and play, I'm going to break something. One of the ways that I was lucky in that when I was growing up in computers, I had DOS around and I was messing around with DOS and those types of things. So by the time I got in Linux all these years later, the terminal wasn't as scary to me because I was used to the DOS thing. But one of the things that was scary, like you said, Noah, was going and typing in these commands and feeling like, oh, I'm going to break my machine. I'm not going to get anything to work. This is where a $5 spin up that you could have for students and people to alleviate their fears really comes in handy, either through a virtual machine for free or a $5 DigitalOcean server or something like that, or Linode or whoever you want to use, because then you can send somebody in there and say, go to town, go launch this server, go make it. And if you break it, you can literally right click in the website GUI and restart the server from scratch and start over again. So that way you don't have that fear of breaking things. And you can start learning these commands, like Noah said, of going through and researching them as you're going through them. Maybe, give them a project, something simple and small. Maybe it's a Mumble server, something easy to do that you just start getting to learn some of these commands and how things interact. And I think that helps get over the fear. It certainly helped me more than I realized it would, just being able to play in these little servers that if they break, you can just refresh them.
I mean, I agree, but what do you think about the idea of some people just don't want to even use the command line at all? Because I think
you're losing the power of Linux at that point. To this point, you can go through Linux and not utilize the GUI. You're just going to be slower than everybody else.
Yeah,
point where the GUI pretty much does everything. It's very rare you have to, but I think you lose a lot of the power of Linux by being afraid of it.
I mean, I agree, but I think the command line is one of the most useful tools of Linux because you have the speed of what it can do and the flexibility of what it can do, and I agree with that. But I also think that the majority of users aren't kind of focused on learning how the system works. They just want to use it as a tool, so like a utility approach. And I think that the only way to alleviate that fear is to not have it there, not even be not rely on it, because I think that one of the things that hurts the adoption is that we have a lot of people who promote trying to learn the infrastructure of the system to basically make it easier to use. But I think that in itself is a kind of a barrier for some people who just don't even want to do that.
And you can also take baby steps. I mean, there's loads of internet sites out there that will give you the 10 most commonly used commands. So like Noah was saying, look up those commands, find out what they do, work out what the difference between ls and ls space minus al is, and then you'll find out that unless you are really, really stupid and just blanketly copy everything that anybody tells you, you can't necessarily do a lot of damage to your system. The worst thing you're going to do is rm the wrong command. But then if you don't know to put sudo in front of it, then all you're going to be able to rm is something in your home directory. So sometimes just baby steps and teach yourself some simple little commands first, and then hopefully you'll get more used to it.
Okay, that's fair. So how can people get in touch with us, Seb?
Well, as you can see from this little section here, even one simple question in your emails enables us to have a good discussion about various items. So send your emails on how you use Linux and applications that you found to comments@destinationlinux.org. So on to some distro news, I guess.
If you insist.
No, we've stopped doing that now. I'm going to be the nice cuddly Zed from now on. So Ubuntu 19.04 has been released. So the feature list that they're hoping to build into it has been released. And I think there's going to be another little sing-song about what they've called it, because it's going to be known as Disco Dingo.
That is the great.
That's
love
awesome.
Disco Dingo. Like in my head, I can see it. A discoing dingo.
I would like to point out, I called it.
Cosmic Cuttlefish was the last one. Wasn't it that people didn't like? Was it
Cosmic Cuttlefish? They said it was weird because of the cuttlefish usage or whatever, but it's becoming.
I thought it was cute.
I'm okay with it.
Care about this that much? Like,
but anything has got to be better than that.
If they called it Michael's haircut, who would care?
I mean, I would enjoy that. That would be great.
I know, but yeah. I think Disco Dingo leaves us a lot of room for awesome wallpapers out there. That's all I'm saying.
I think that Disco Dingo is a fun name. I mean, I'm glad that they're not doing trying to be all ridiculous. They're just they're embracing the absurdity that they could be using. So as a joke, I called both Disco and Dingo separately, and how some people will just say
somebody go through the archives and see if he's lying.
No, I actually have a tweet where it shows in May that I called it as Dingo. The Disco thing I did it on a podcast, and I don't remember which podcast it was because
he forgets. There,
yeah, there's that. But the Dingo thing, I have evidence for.
Michael the goldfish. That's what we're calling.
Yeah, exactly.
Goldfish Michael.
So moving on from Michael's brain prowess, this will not be an LTS release. For those of you who are not aware, it's only the even numbers when they get to 04 that become a long-term support.
Actually, that's the misconception. That's the misconception there, is that a lot of people believe that only the .04 numbers are the LTS release.
No, the even numbers.
The even number years is the way I just subscribe.
Yeah, so 2004 is an LTS. 2010 won't be an LTS. So are you saying there has been a 10 LTS?
No, he's saying that people think that sometimes 1904 or 1704 would be an LTS. Yeah. Where they think that the 04 is always an LTS.
Quite a bit.
Yeah, gotcha.
Because there are people who are confused that think that the 04 is always an LTS, but it's only every 2 years. Yeah,
gotcha. Gotcha. So this is scheduled for delivery on April the 18th of 2019. And they're hoping to bring out a number of items here. You'll have to forgive me because my voice is going. So if someone could take over reading out what the list of things that we can expect.
Well, I know Michael's going to be excited about this. GNOME 3.32. Michael.
Yes.
Finally,
Yes.
it's out there. Now, are they removing features in 3.32?
Probably. I don't think they've announced.
What can we expect to be removed in 3.32? I'm kidding. We love GNOME sometimes. Linux kernel 5.0 is going to be in this one. So this is a change in how they've done the Linux kernel numbering up to this point. Am I right?
Sort of. That they kind of changed it in the 3 series, where in the you know how there was like 2 had like this ridiculously long path. There was like, it was 2.26 or something by the time they got rid of it. And also that was about 10 years. The 2 series was about 10 years long. Then they were like, they decided to change it. And then one day, I think it was the 4 series. The 3 series was like an arbitrary choice. The 4th series, they were like, well, we're just going to do it when we feel like it. So then the 5th series, the series like 5.0 is basically just, they think, yeah, there's been enough changes. Let's go ahead and just change it. It's like there's no like big milestone that they're going for. They're just eventually like, it's been enough times, enough releases. We're just going to go ahead and move it on.
Nice. Well, they also got the Android integration that will be in this one, which is kind of a JavaScript implementation of KDE Connect, which I think is really important.
Yeah.
To make sure all these desktop environments either using KDE Connect or some variation thereof, because I think it's becoming very important to a lot of users to have that integration.
Oh, yeah.
You get new Ubuntu software store look, new snaps, of course, and there's going to be performance batches in there.
Which is always awesome.
Stuff. Yeah, you definitely want things to run faster.
So a quick question about the snaps, guys, because although I am adopting them more, and yes, they are very useful, there's a couple of them that never seem to work for me. Now, OBS is one of them. And the reason why I don't use the snap is because it just doesn't work with NVENC at the moment. And you have to issue some weird snap commands to get your webcam working. So I'm pretty sure I've tried something to do with Steam. I'm not sure if it has a snap out there already. But when I used it, it couldn't see my network drive where all of my Steam games were installed. It wouldn't come out of the snap to look at my configured network. So I hope they're going to fix that before they do.
The current Steam is more of a test case prototype type thing. So like they're doing a Steam, like a Windows version of Steam inside of a snap to see if it's possible. So they could use certain games that are not Linux based and see if they could do it. This was before Proton existed. I don't know if that changes anything, but I think that what they're trying to do is make sure that Steam in the future can be ran as a snap in general. So that, like,
a lot of this probably has to do with how they sandbox these apps initially within the snaps and why you can't access things outside of it. But I don't think you're the first one to run into that issue, Zeb, because I'm quite certain we've seen somebody having that issue with their Steam games in our Telegram group. And gosh, I could have sworn, Zeb, you were the one that helped them fix it and say, stop using the snap. But in any case, it is an issue out there. And then we've got the touchscreen enhancements that they're going to be making to the GNOME shell as well. So I don't know. Are touchscreen monitors making a comeback? Because they've been around forever, and I'm starting to see a lot of touchscreen integration. Yet Ubuntu and folks are not necessarily focusing their attention on tablets or phones or anything. So I'm kind of curious why everybody's going back to all this touchscreen stuff.
It's kind of becoming a thing. But laptops have them more often now, and there's some people are actually using touchscreens a lot, and there's been some issues of people not are being bothered by using Linux because of the touch aspects. Because I don't know why would someone want to touch their screen. Like, I don't get it. Like, I understand why you're in your hand in your phone, but like reaching out like 3 feet, why?
No. But the thing is, there's an awful lot of laptops now that you can just flip 180 degrees and have them resting on your palm.
That's part of it, but I think the bigger place that I have seen it is in like a public kiosk situation. So a lot of the hotels and a lot of the places so for example, we have a water park that we do IT contracting for, and they have a waiver thing, and it's literally yes, sign your name and I agree. Now we're using Linux for that. and it's just way cleaner to do that with the touchscreen than have a keyboard and mouse.
That's true.
Nice.
It's so hard to get used to this change, you know, the touchscreen stuff, because so many times at work, my greatest pet peeve would be somebody coming up to your screen and touching your monitor to point something out.
Yeah.
Like, it just makes you want to punch them in the face. And now you've got these touchscreen monitors with your laptop, like, you know.
I don't want to punch them, but I thought about it.
Oh,
before.
I want to punch them. Don't touch my monitor.
Like you don't have to touch it,
ever
just
touch
kind of
my
just
monitor.
hover a little bit. Like I can figure out what you mean anyway.
Exactly.
So next up in the show, Neptune 5.6 was released this week, and this is a Debian-based distribution out of Germany. And this is, if you're not familiar with it, they recently upgraded to Debian 9 Stretch. And what's really cool about this one is that they have like the underlying base of Debian, but they upgrade the kernel and the video drivers and things like that. And they also have like a stable implementation of like their desktop environment and their other stack. So it's an interesting approach of having, like, most of the time people want to get the base or the core to not be rolling, or to not be rolling, and then get the stuff on top rolling. And they're doing kind of like an opposite, where they make sure all the core fundamentals are up to date as much as possible. And then they have the other stack that's more stable LTS type release. So like Plasma 5.12 is the desktop that they're currently using. Has anybody given this a look?
I haven't, but I do like the fact that although they're Debian based and everybody thinks Debian based is going to be older stuff, they've taken their time to make available one of the latest, the kernels, the 4.18 kernels, and as well as providing Mesa 18.1.9. So yes, you can have that base stability, but it's nice to have all the goodies that go with it. So yeah, kudos to them. But I've not tried this particular distro.
I use Arch. But I did spin this up in a virtual machine.
There it is.
And check this one out. I was very, very impressed with this whole setup they have here. First of all, the color schemes, the second you log into it, the desktop layout is absolutely gorgeous and inviting. They have a nice workspace switcher set up there, very consistent theme throughout the entire thing. Of course, you're on the very stable Debian distro here, but one of the things that really caught my attention, and you actually got yelled at by me, Michael, in the middle of the week for this, is the Excalibur menu that they utilize for KDE.
Yeah.
I didn't know it existed, and I go in there and I'm looking at their menu and I'm like, this is the most perfect KDE menu I've seen. Where did they get this? And I'm right clicking trying to find the name, and I find it. And I yelled at you, Michael, because you are the KDE expert. You never told me that this exists. Excalibur menu in KDE is brilliant if you've not tried it. At least for me, I love it.
So for those who are I also haven't said anything to, there's store.kde.org is basically like an open desktop implementation of KDE applications and applets and widgets and stuff. And Excalibur menu is in there, as well as about 5 or 6 other menus that you could try if you wanted to, including some really interesting things like very simple, but also kind of like dashboardy type menus as well. And yeah, I did totally forget that this existed. I don't know why I never bothered to mention it before, but there are a lot of things in that store if you want to check them out. They're really good. So you can even do the look and feel system is another thing that's in there.
And very easy to set up as well. They make it really easy to get those implemented. And so I absolutely listen. If you're looking for a Debian-based distro, you know, I always throw out the MX out there because MX is one. But if you're looking for something different to try out, Neptune really impressed me. It's something I could definitely see myself installing. It's interesting. One of the patrons mentioned in chat about, is Debian slower? Because we all know that it's kind of, you know, older releases and that type of thing. So let me open that up to you guys, because I think that's a big misconception out there that a Debian's older, it's going to be on an older kernel, therefore it's going to be slower and not perform as well.
The answer is yes, it is slower, but on purpose. So there's different sections of Debian. There's actually, a lot of people misunderstand that Debian, and they think all of Debian is like really slow to update. There's actually multiple branches and channels of Debian. Debian Stable is the one that most people are associated to as far as the one that's being updated. But there's also Debian Testing and Debian Unstable, which is also nicknamed SID. And Debian SID is essentially a rolling release version of Debian. And it's, in some cases, it even rolls even faster than Arch, even. And not all the time, but there's a lot of cases where it will. It will, but
fake news.
But there's a difference between the Arch rolling is more focused on usage, whereas the Debian unstable is more of a developer set and things like that. So they're mainly focused on the stable version. That's why when they talk about new releases, they're only referring to the stable. But as far as like the way this Neptune is doing it, they're basically taking the stable version and then pulling stuff from testing and putting it into the stable. So like they're having a merge of different branches. Similar things are done by MX Linux and other things like that. So that might be one of the things that would explain.
So you get the latest video card drivers for AMD in there that they're pulling in. You get you get a later kernel, obviously 4.18.6 in here. You also get some refreshed packages and things that may not be available, and codecs and tools installed that they're doing that makes it a little bit different than if you just went and downloaded Debian by itself.
And just to clarify, because I noticed one of our patrons was stating it, that when we talk about Debian being slow, we're only talking about the release cycle and the way that it comes out. The actual core operating system itself, I find, is pretty quick. Yeah, very, very quick. So it's not the OS that's slow. It's just their release cycle, and it's nice and stable and steady.
Yeah, and the reason why they have the release to the amount of time they do is because it's more of a functional. The stability of it is not necessarily what it is. It's more of what you can expect from the distribution. So if you're running Debian as an enterprise thing, or you're basing your content on Debian, you want to make sure that, especially enterprises, they don't want to have to target rolling releases all the time because everything could move so fast that they can't keep up. And with Debian, when they get every 3 years or so, it makes it easier for a company to base their stuff on top of it.
Right.
That's one of the reasons why Ubuntu has LTSs as well.
Yeah. Have you tried some Debian stuff over the years?
Yeah, I have. Honestly, I have, and this might upset some people in the audience, so don't be gentle with me, but I have yet to find anything that Debian can do that CentOS doesn't do better. And when I say better, I don't necessarily mean that it's more performance or anything like that. I just mean that with CentOS, or Red Hat rather, I can stack and layer support on top of it very, very easily. Pay my $359, and all of a sudden I've got a license on top of it. I don't know that Debian is really situated to offer that same kind of support layering, and so and Debian and CentOS they kind of both appeal to the same audience, right? They both are this rock stable, slow moving, but you can put it for a long, long time and leave it in production. Both of those kind of approach Linux that same way. And so I've always found CentOS to be a better choice. But it's really, at the end of the day, it's a personal decision. And if it ends with NUX, it's a plus in my book.
So send your emails for all the Debian lovers out there to comments@destinationlinux.com and put Noah in the subject line, and you can troll him and tell him how mad you are about that later.
Yeah, go right ahead, because I don't get those emails. So
I'll set up a forward.
Yeah, we got forward those right to. No, that's interesting insight. So talking about perfection, the perfect desktop environment, the greatest thing that ever happened to Linux.
KDE
I
Plasma.
know it's not KDE.
i3 window
we just got done
manager
talking about KDE.
version 4.16 was released. And you guys know that i3 is the greatest window manager out there. There are others that try to be i3, but there is only one i3. Of course, that's my opinion. And for all the i3 prodigies out there, we got some new improvements in i3, making it, believe it or not, even more awesome than it was before. Michael, you're using i3 now. Zeb doesn't ever want to try i3. We're going to get Noah there eventually, I think. I hope.
Is one of the new releases the automatic insertion of shift when someone forgets it in the instructions?
Shut up, Zeb. What do you think, Noah? Are you going to be trying out i3 anytime soon?
Absolutely. I've played with i3. Look, I'm a big fan of tiling window managers. In fact, I've said a couple of times before, I've got a box inside of my shop that its only function in life is for getting serious work done. And now it's not running i3. It's running awesome, but same concept, right? It's a tiling window manager, and I think the first one I used was Xmonad. And I always tell people, if you want a distraction-free work environment and you have to work it the most efficient way possible, tiling window manager is the way to go. Now, if you want bells and whistles and you want to play with stuff and you want it to look fancy and you want to impress all your neighbors and you want your wife to be able to use it, probably not i3. But again, ultimate efficiency. There's nothing can beat the efficiency of a tiling window manager, both in performance and in the productivity of work.
Yeah.
Efficiency.
Well, one of the things I love about i3 is you can get tons of support out there. There's lots of great documentation, but they're doing even more in this release to improve their documentation further. And what that helps you do is be able to understand the config file and be able to make those customizations.
They need that. They might want to have like a wallpaper that gives you tips about what you're supposed to do once you have it installed.
Like I created up on my GitHub page that had the wrong command for Zeb. Yeah, that would be.
Oh, well, I mean, if the documentation is correct.
All my documentation was correct except for how to exit out of it. I didn't include the shift button in there, so Zeb was stuck in i3 and had no way of escaping.
That sounds like that you orchestrated that. Just to make sure Zeb could.
Yeah.
Thankfully, my computer has a reset button.
Yeah. Well, you get some IPC enhancements in here. You get support for startup notifications in the i3 config wizard and what they call the nag bar in i3. New additions to i3 Sensible Terminal and improved GTK applications support displaying window decorations correctly, plus a bunch of bug fixes out there. So the happiest thing to me is i3 is continuing on. It's the greatest window manager out there, at least in my opinion. So I'm glad to see any improvements out there being made to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's very cool.
Now, before we move on, I'm really pleased that we have Noah as a guest with as a full-time presenter with us now, because we can actually give him the next subject and know it's not going to take up the next 3/4 of an hour. It's fantastic.
You'll see.
So I'm going to go ahead and challenge Ryan's previous assertion that i3 is the best desktop environment ever, and I'm going to go ahead and agree with Michael that he's right, that KDE is. And I've prepared a brief 260-point presentation on the KDE Connect 1.0. So we're going to get through this 2.5 hours presentation as fast as we possibly can. And KDE Connect has really become a powerful tool for communicating and interacting with your smartphone. And for those of you who have not played with it before, it really is a culmination of two open source projects independently, both Android from the Google side and KDE on the desktop side, coming together. And it really shows you what can happen. Because when Apple wants to do something, for example, they want to integrate these two components together. They have to hire developers to work for Apple, and then they both sit in one room, and their budget is constrained to however many people they can hire for between both the smartphone interaction and the desktop side. We don't have that issue in open source. We have the most passionate, intelligent, well-rounded desktop people ever, and they're developing KDE, and then you get these people that are working on Android, and they're able to develop some of the stuff so that all this stuff can tie in together. And so 1.10 is that it comes with the following enhancement: improved support for Android Oreo, better mouse input handling, SMS handling improvements with the and on that note, I actually converted somebody to Linux just because of the ability to handle SMS tie into their desktop. They thought that was the coolest thing ever. And it's becoming less relevant now because obviously a lot of the cell phone carriers are providing that functionality inside of the web browser, but we've had it for a while. They dropped support for Android 4.0, but how many people are using 15-year-old smartphones? And recently, there was a YouTube comment from a viewer that stated that they loved Linux because they couldn't get their phone properly to connect Linux. They were leaving. So yeah, I mean, check out KDE Connect if you've not played for it. It's one of those things that it was one of the first things I ever played with KDE, and now I can't imagine using it. It's one of those features that I couldn't imagine going to another desktop environment and not having it anymore.
Well, to be clear, though, KDE Connect works with any desktop you want to, as long as you install the app indicator. So,
but it doesn't. I tried using it on.
It's not as good as on Plasma. Like on Plasma, it's amazing. On anything else, it's like it's still good.
Is that why they wrote GS Connect then instead of just porting over KDE Connect because it doesn't function right?
No, because GS Connect actually depends on KDE Connect.
I know, but why would they write a separate app? Why not just use KDE Connect? Is it because the interfaces doesn't work?
It's because GNOME got rid of app indicator support.
Oh, wow. Oh my
It
gosh.
kind of is.
So
It kind of is.
embarrassing.
You can't use an app indicator.
Nobody
when
used it anyway. Nobody wants to know what their applications are doing. Notifications, that's so 2015.
Right? There's no one cares anymore. But so
Oh,
GS
wow.
Connect makes it possible to integrate it into the shell of GNOME, and it's nice to have that another project that is using the core pieces of KDE Connect and then making it easier for another desktop platform to use it. And I'm okay with them using it. In fact, I suggest other DEs if they wanted to. You should just do some kind of partnership with KDE Connect and integrate their Android app, because they've done all the work there as well as they've done all the API stuff on the desktop. And it would be very beneficial for every DE to have this, because KDE Connect is one of the things that I love Plasma for. And it's just because they own Plasma, it's seamless and it just works. Every aspect of it works beautifully. But there's also, what I found interesting is that in this latest release, they talked about how they have a Windows build now. So you can actually use your Android phone on Windows with KDE Connect.
Filthy dual booters will be happy to know that.
The barbarians, yeah, I know. But it's interesting that they're doing it, because it might be another one of those gradual teasing of people, like, trying out something and then they see that it's a better experience on Linux or something like that. So I think this is pretty cool, even though I have no intention of ever using that part. But
I think it's an amazing tool. In fact, the YouTube comment you were talking about was on my channel, Noah, and they basically, my channel, a lot of people are new to Linux there because they all follow kind of the 30 days Linux when I switched over to Linux. So, but one of the comments, unfortunately, recently was, "Hey, I couldn't get my phone to work and connect properly in Linux, and I'm going back to Windows." So I was like,
Did they elaborate on what?
You got to go back to, try KDE Connect, and so I gave.
Did they elaborate what that means? Like, well, I've heard that before. I said I couldn't get my, and I've always kind of questioned. Like, I connect my hotspot to my phone, and obviously, like I say, the KDE Connect thing is great. At the same time, like with the advent of things like with technologies like Telegram, what does one really connect their phone to their laptop for? Your photos are syncing over Google Photos if you're using Android, or iCloud if you're using a Fruity phone. What does one connect their phone to their computer for?
Well, I guess if you're using Google things, personally, that's a good question. Personally, I connect my phone to get photos and videos off because I don't utilize Google products to upload that stuff to. But yeah, I think it's an interesting question.
Even then, it should,
somebody who's going back to Windows, they probably be okay using Google products, and you have that auto sync.
Well,
yeah.
Then the other thing, as far as like pulling files off, I mean, that's going to show up as an MTM device. So I'd be interesting to dig into that listener and find out exactly what their issue was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm curious about it too. And there's another thing. If you haven't heard of KDE Connect before, there are other things in just like notification sync and SMS and stuff like that. One of the things that it's really cool about it. Now, this is it's not as good as it used to be, but there's because of what keyboards are available now on Android. But there is this feature where you can actually use your phone as an input device for your desktop. So you can actually use it as the touchscreen on your phone as a mouse for your computer, or as the keyboard because that actually adds the fact that if you use the dictation on your phone, you can then use that to dictate on your computer. So it's a really slick way of doing it.
When we were at our lake house, I had the laptop connected to our TV, and we were watching movies, and I was using KDE Connect, the input to be able to control the laptop from.
Oh, what a
really
cool idea!
And everybody that was around me was like, "Whoa, you can do that? How do you do that?" And I'm like, "Linux."
Love it.
Okay, so talking about filthy dual booters, Ryan.
Gross.
Microsoft is in the news again because they're porting more tools to the open source field. And see, I never realized that sysinternals was an official part of Microsoft. I always thought it was just a group of Microsoft developers who went away and started creating all these sysinternals software. So it's nice for them to see all of that work being recognized. But what they're actually doing now is they're porting over those software packages to Linux. Now, if you've ever looked at that sysinternals suite, there are probably 20 to 30 different types of commands that systems administrators can use for debugging their CPUs and memory performance and analyzing processes. But what I find strange is, don't we have all of these tools on Linux anyway? Or is it always good to see how someone else does it because you might be able to improve your one?
Well, I think it's more of a situation which you have people who are very used to, you have administrators who've been doing it for decades. They're used to using certain tools. They're now having new servers out there, for instance, like Azure, which is going to be using Linux. They're used to using and seeing things a certain way. They like the tools to see how to monitor or look for performance or process issues or debug their servers. These are the tools they love. So yeah, we have equivalents over in Linux, but it is nice to give people who are used to a certain thing a very familiar experience, and bringing these tools over, I think is very cool. So do we have to have them? No. But it definitely helps the system administrators, especially out there, to be able to utilize the tools they prefer. You use the software you want as long as it's on Linux, and Microsoft porting those tools over is pretty cool. They're getting a lot of brownie points here lately. They're kind of every week hitting the news with more and more stuff, and that makes me happy to see.
I mean, yeah, okay. They're doing some good things, sure. Okay. But
I mean, we could keep moving the goalpost on them.
I have not moved the goalpost whatsoever. There is one thing.
What's the goalpost that Microsoft is Windows becomes Linux?
No, the goalpost is doing something that will not benefit them in any way, but does benefit Linux. Like this benefits them.
Like all the code contributions they make to Linux?
No, because those benefit them. Because Azure isn't a good example of it.
Why would Windows or Microsoft spend their time?
That's the point. If they want to prove
no benefit to them,
if they want to prove that they have changed, that's what they have to do.
But by them working on stuff that benefits them in Linux, it still benefits us.
I'm not saying it's not good. I'm just saying I'm not on the same side as them and saying they've changed. I'm saying they are more like, hey, thanks for joining the party, but you're still in the coat room. You're not actually putting any much effort into the thing. So like for my example would be, if they ever released MS Office on Linux, that would prove that they care about Linux rather than just their bottom line. Because right now, the sysinternals things, this helps them because of Azure being the majority. Like they even say that every few months it gets higher and higher, and at one point it was even more than Windows Server. So it only makes sense that people who are using it, who are used to using the sysinternals, they would port it so that they could continue to use it, and that way they wouldn't create a barrier for their customers. So that's a benefit to themselves. I think it's great that they're doing it, and it does benefit us overall. It's just, it doesn't prove to me that they have changed. It just proves to me that they are willing to at least kind of like wiggle room type approach.
Interesting. Look, I think it's a big deal, and I'm very happy to see more and more of these tools coming over.
I'm glad. I think it's a big deal that they're
public enemy number one right now. Just to make sure everybody's clear on who we hate, it's Facebook and Google. It's not Microsoft.
Right. It's not. I would have to agree.
That's the latest consensus.
Yes.
I would agree that they are not the number one. Maybe top 5 though. Still, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll go there.
Oracle's
Michael,
up there too.
Give me some good news. This makes me so happy. I was drooling over this.
This is a awesome news, and it also, not only is it great hardware, it looks really good too. They put a lot of effort into that.
So good.
The manufacturing of it is so cool. Ooh. So System76 unveils their new Thelio handcrafted open source-ish desktop, and it is a beast. Like there's like 3 different tiers of it. The maximum tier is so absurd I barely can fathom its existence.
Ludicrous mode.
Yeah, it's 786 gigs of ECC RAM,
pure beauty,
and 86 terabytes of storage potentials.
Sing to me, Michael.
Yeah.
Keep going.
That's wow. How many distros could I put on 86 terabytes?
Exactly.
A lot.
But there's another thing about it is that they also have another model that has the Threadripper. And so that's just important by itself. I mean, you don't want to like completely waste the opportunity of having a Threadripper on your product line. So, but anyway, they also have another one that's not as ridiculous. That is more of a starting version, but it's still even more it's still very powerful too. So you can get that one up to 32 gigs of memory. But the really, I as a designer, I really respect the fact that they put the effort into the design. And if you haven't seen it, you need to check it out. It is a very nice, slick with like wood grained approach to it. It's a very beautiful case that I never thought I'd say.
Absolutely stunningly gorgeous. And we finally found out what they were using the lasers for. When we had them on the show, they were talking about having lasers.
Exactly.
We asked for access. They said no. Now we know what they were doing with the lasers. These machines look better than any Mac out there. Now, you can say what you want about Apple. And yes, they've made dumb decisions in their designs lately, but generally they have been the staple of beauty, right, when it comes to computing.
Mm-hmm.
This is more beautiful than anything Mac has ever released. The wood grain accents along with the aluminum, the way that they did the cooling systems in here, the amount of power that you can pack into them. And by the way, the prices... You could actually, that ludicrous one, the starting price is $28.99, which is about the price of a crappy MacBook Pro with with dongles things. So, I mean, this is the machine to buy. I love building my own machines. I've built them my whole life. Since I was 12 years old, I've been building my computers. This may be the first time I actually go out and buy a pre-made machine. And they made it so it's not proprietary, so you can actually keep upgrading it. So they didn't make special brackets or things so you could never put your own GPU or change your motherboard out. You can use this case forever, and it's beautiful enough that you would want to.
They even went farther than that. They actually released the blueprints of making your own version if you wanted to, and
awesome.
It's crazy. And they also there's an open source hardware alliance. And a lot of people aren't aware of that, but because they're like, when this was announced, they're talking about the first open source desktop product like this, and a lot of people were mad about it's not fully open because of the daughter board system they made.
People kill me, man. They really do.
But I mean, it's the one thing is that the open source hardware alliance has certified it as open source hardware because of the way that it is built and what they produce is open, and they provide all the source for the blueprints of building it and all this other stuff. So it is an open source desktop, but it might not be like completely 100% open in everybody's
because why didn't you use the Power 9 processor and all this type of junk runs in? But you know what? These people end up taking away from the work that these companies do. Let me tell you a little story because I think it's interesting. When we were running our own computer shop down in Florida, my dad loved IBM. We sold IBM processors, Blue Lightning, the works. That was his favorite. That's what, when he got into computers, that's what they were using. IBM was the best. Intel started coming out. People would come into our shop and they started asking for Intel. But my dad was like, no, I sell IBM processors. That's what I want. But Intel kept banging on the door. You know, they kept doing their advertising. Everybody who knew nothing about computers knew to walk in and look for Intel Inside sticker. To the point where eventually, even though IBM was still making processors and everything back then, I was like, look, everybody's coming in. They want an Intel. We have to start selling Intel, right? Because there's name recognition in there. The same thing happens here with System 76. Most of your average people have no idea what Power 9 and these other CPUs are. They're awesome. They're amazing. I'm excited for them, but they have no idea. You have to have some brand recognition in there. Intel has brand recognition. Ryzen has brand recognition. They're taking the right steps here. If Power 9 ends up being the best CPU in the world, I'm sure they'll stick one in there too. But this is a stepping stone, and you have to sell things. So you can either be completely set on this concept of everything has to be open source, which we want to get to, but I'm not going to sell any, or let's kind of meet in the middle here. And I think that's what they did, and it was a smart business move. In my opinion.
I agree. And I also think that what the proof of what their goal is eventually going to be a fully open thing when they can is because they have moved everything that's proprietary off onto a different board, so that if you wanted to use this machine without that board, you could just not have the board connected and just use the open source pieces and stuff. So it is potential that they're going to be using this is to gradually get to it. And I think the approach of gradual adoption of it is better, because it is better to have the functionality that you want in a computer than not to. So
Right.
I'm a very big fan of this, and I if you haven't checked it out, you should definitely go check it out because there's a ton of information.
Beautiful. You want to make us jealous. Post pictures when you get one, because
Exactly.
if I wasn't buying a new house right now, it would be on its way. I'm serious right now. It is one gorgeous machine. All right, so when you're building power machines and gaming machines, everybody wants water cooling. Water cooling is a big thing, especially for gaming enthusiasts, although it can be used for other things as well. But water cooling is a big thing you see out there. I actually recommend most people don't do this, water cooling options, but a lot of people do it anyways. I've definitely installed hundreds and hundreds of water coolers over the years in building machines for gamers and things like that. They love them, but they can be dangerous out there. But one of the things that we haven't had in the Linux community is a lot of support for these. And what I mean by that is you want to be able to monitor these devices to understand, number one, are all your pumps working? Are you getting the proper flow? Do you need to speed up or slow it down? And all of those type of things. So you can have a water cooler because obviously in your machine, but you're not going to have any ways to really control it easily within Linux. Of course, the Linux community has gone out there. They've created some of these software packages to allow you to interface with them. But I thought this particular one was really interesting because a article was out there talking about the best water cooler for Linux, and it happens to be the G Kraken, which is the NZXT Kraken water cooling system, because the person who wrote for the manufacturer the software to allow you to control everything from RGB to the pumps to all of that stuff has some of the best GUI software out there for the controls. So if you're looking for water cooling in Linux gaming machine, it looks like the NZXT Kraken water cooling system would be the way to go. Michael, Noah, any of you guys into the water cooling blocks and all of that fun stuff?
I prefer liquid nitrogen.
I haven't done it. Are you serious?
No, not at all.
Okay, I didn't think so, but I was. Listen, you know what? I have spent ridiculous amounts of money where I shouldn't have. So who am I to judge? I haven't used it myself, but a friend of ours, a friend of Michael and I's, Mr. Rikai, is big into water cooling. And so when he built his last machine, I had the privilege of being able to install a water cooler. And let me tell you something. If you want the most efficient cooling money can buy, that has it's absolutely silent, man, water cooling is the way to go.
Yeah, that's true. If you wanted a silent approach, then water cooling is a great way. The fans are the easiest approach of doing the cooling, but they are, they can definitely be pretty loud unless you get one of those cases that have like.
There's a lot of reasons why I tell people not to use them.
But the water part, it might be one of them.
That's one of the big ones. People want, I had one person who's like, I want water cooling. It looks so cool. And I'm like, listen, I can build you whatever you want, but you keep telling me you want to take it to LAN parties, and generally having your PC bounce around with a water cooling system on it, not the best idea in the world. And so there's just a lot of people see it and they think it's cool and they want it, but fans can be very efficient as well in cooling your system down. And the fans have only gotten better and better and better over the years. But you're absolutely right, Noah. Water cooling is the supreme way of doing it. And in fact, I probably will be setting one up for the Vegas 64 just to see how cool I can get it as part of a video I want to do, just for the sake of doing it. But I don't recommend it for most people unless you have experience building, because you can ruin thousands of dollars of equipment for a $100 pump of water for saving 20 degrees in temperature,
Yeah.
But if you want to see some ridiculously good water builds, pop over to Overclockers, and there's a guy over there called Big Ben. I think he currently has 16 of the 20 world overclocking records. Now he does that with liquid helium when they're in the competitions. Seriously, he's got videos up there. They're in the middle of the competition, and he's got two assistants pouring liquid helium over the top of the processors to keep them cool while he's pumping up. But he's got some ridiculously awesome builds out there, including one that's got an i9 and an i7 processor in the same PC. It's two PCs in one, and I think it sells for about $30,000 or something crazy.
Wow. Very cool.
But yeah, I'm like you. I couldn't use water coolers because I'd go in there to change the RAM and hit the pipe, and there'd be water everywhere, and I'd forget to turn the electrics off. And not for
Yeah, it's not worth it for most people. Even I wouldn't even bother with that as well. But anyway.
Speaking of building stuff that's very, very cool, AMD has made an exciting announcement about their availability of their new GPU technology, except you can't really get it yet. While most of us were excited to hear about their 7 nanometer gaming GPU, AMD went after the enterprise market with their first Radeon Instinct MI50 and MI60. These cards are optimized not for gaming, but rather for deep learning, rendering, and cloud computing. Optimized for deep learning operations mixed with FP16, FP32, and INT8 capabilities bring customers supercharged compute capabilities to meet today's demanding system requirements. I'm going to go ahead and ask Ryan, what is your thoughts on this? Because, I mean, here's the truth. This is one of those things where I'm glad that AMD is doing really cool stuff, and I'm glad that we're moving the technology needle forward. And most of all, what I'm really happy for is that we have some competition in the GPU world, because really, if you think about it, NVIDIA's biggest competition is themselves. Their last year, they got to figure out a way to make the next year's generation better than last year's generation so they can get some money out of you. So I'm happy to see that there are people competing in this space, but I'm just not a gamer. I'm just not a, so GPU technology, unless it relates to Bitcoin mining, none of my servers
totally
have GPUs in
could.
them.
This could relate
yeah,
to Bitcoin mining.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. Unless it has that kind of draw, and unless I've actually seen it and have a practical purpose, it's just not, it's not something that really toots my horn.
Yeah, what is interesting about this, what I find so fascinating is, number one, I've been so excited on the 7 nanometer technology. What this allows, one of the biggest complaints that have happened with AMD over the years, which they have done a lot of work in improving, was the jokes about anytime you run AMD, it's like running a space heater, right? They can get very, very hot. And obviously they changed that tremendously with their recent CPUs. Their GPUs, frankly, in the Vega 64, it's a very hot card compared to NVIDIA. So getting down to the 7 nanometer technology allows for a lot of things to happen, like less power consumption, etc. And we know the new Vega line likely is rumored to be on the 7 nanometer technology. They're also maybe utilizing this for their processors as well. This also has allowed these GPUs to allow AMD to create certain partnerships. These are mainly server-based deep learning GPUs. So for, very complex AI, deep learning type technologies. So me and you would get no value out of them. You're not going to get sweet frames per second on this in ballistic overkill. You wouldn't even want to spend the money. But it does show that AMD has continued to keep Intel on the rocks, and now they are taking on partnerships with with Amazon, which we know Amazon, I think, has one of the biggest web services, the AWC, out there. Most every major corporation, or at least a lot of major corporations and things, are running on Amazon's backbone. And they're going to start using the EPYC processors in this. Of course, as this gets out there through the enterprises, it will get cheaper. They'll get more efficient with it. And you'll start seeing GPUs and consumer CPUs based on 7 nanometer. So this is a bigger deal. Even though we can't play with the tech, which kind of stinks, this is a bigger deal for AMD and driving the competition against Intel. And not that I hate Intel. I like Intel stuff a lot, actually. It's just I love that competition because it's going to drive the innovation, and that's exactly what has happened. Intel, for the first time, is against the ropes. They keep releasing things just to oh crap, AMD's throw something out there. They are under so much pressure right now in those exec rooms, getting beat up to drive innovation and come up with something new to compete with it, because they're just falling behind.
Yeah. So tell me, guys, is this something that will compete head on with the NVIDIA Titan V? The Titan 5 card, because that was brought out as not being a gamer card, but for this deep learning and all that sort of stuff. So is that the sort of market they're going for, or is Titan not even in the frame?
Yeah, I mean, it would, at this technology, based on, we don't know what the specs or how good it's going to be, and yes, it would be competitive to NVIDIA's kind of server-based cards and deep learning cards out there. Obviously, like Michael said, people probably will buy these for Bitcoin money. They probably be perfect for that, actually. So you'll probably have that as well. But yeah, this is the competition. But besides Samsung, who announced it the same week, AMD is the only one right now, besides Samsung, that has a 7 nanometer technology in here. This means less power consumption. When we were talking about mobile devices, for instance, being able to have a very powerful ARM processor, the whole idea is less power consumption. When you're looking at laptops, it's the same way. So you can have them for longer and all of that stuff, because the batteries have reached this point where we can either just put bigger batteries in. The technology hasn't really moved enough yet that we can, the battery technology improves. So now they're improving the components to use less energy, but you still want that same power. You don't want things to be sluggish and all of that. And things like 7 nanometers allows you to accomplish that, versus like 24 and 48 nanometers and everything else that we've been dealing with before. So Ryzen brought in the 14 nanometer technology, and now this is bringing us 7. It's awesome to see all this stuff happening.
Yeah, and you mentioned Samsung, but Huawei have done it as well with their Kirin 980 chips. They're 7 nanometers, and they're out in machines already.
Yeah, this is very cool
late
stuff.
20 Pro's got one.
So I don't know. It made me very excited to see it. It made me very excited just to see AMD be so competitive out there. But you guys know I talk a lot of trash about Linux users and Android, the fact that they utilize stock Android.
Really? Oh, that's the first time I've heard of this.
Yeah. But
sorry, what version are they on with KDE Connect for iOS?
Oh, that's 0.
They're working on it, Noah. They said they're working on an iOS version.
Okay.
Are
they working on alternative ROMs for the iPhone as well? Is that's coming out?
Shut up, Noah.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. You were saying something about open source users are better fitted to iOS and Android.
I love how all these Linux open source users love the most privacy and invasive devices possible to run on their phones. Real good job.
Excuse me. I don't think anybody in this room has a Windows phone.
So I am jealous, though, based on this news article, and I may have to pick me up a Galaxy Note 9 here for this, because it's so cool. Samsung DeX is bringing. We've actually talked about this when it's first announced, but it's finally out in beta. And what this is if you have a Galaxy Note 9 or a Tab S4, you can participate in the beta right now for Samsung DeX, which essentially allows you to have a full Ubuntu, well, not a customized Ubuntu 16.04 desktop on your phone. So if you're out there using your phone, you get home, you want to use a keyboard and mouse, you plug your phone in, and now it becomes your computer desktop where you can utilize Ubuntu and most of its power. Convergence is here. I think this is one of the most exciting things happening out there. When you talk about the convergence, Motorola and others have tried this before, but based on what I'm seeing in some of these videos, this may be the best implementation of convergence I've seen. Obviously, you can have access to the terminal. If you're a developer, you can do all the things you need to do as a developer through this. You carry your phone with you when you're on trips. You don't now have to carry a separate device there. You just have to have, your keyboard, your mouse, your portable keyboard, mouse, and things on you, and you can start using Linux anywhere. What do you guys think?
I think technically it's fantastic. I mean, I think the idea of convergence is something it's going to happen, and this is one of the best examples so far of it getting it done. And I think that, in my opinion, I would rather have the KDE Connect style of convergence that's just like the utility type. But this is a really cool thing that you can just run Ubuntu directly on your phone, because, I mean, our phones now are getting to the point where they're basically just computers in a small form factor, or even smaller than laptops. And the fact that you can do this now is just a really cool idea. Like I saw the demo of it, and it was quite amazing, really.
Mm-hmm.
So, go ahead.
I think this is a really interesting move on Samsung's part, or continues to be an interesting move on Samsung's part, because if you follow Samsung for the past couple of years, they continue to move away from Google products and continue to put their own in. They put their own calendar app, they put their own phone app, they have their own. They clearly want to be a competitive independent brand without giving up their tie to Android. And I think what this is going to allow them to do is, I think it opens a real possibility of seeing a third potentially a third player getting Linux involved in that mobile sphere. And would take a company like Samsung to do it, because I hear that all the time. I hear people, they don't call it an iOS and an Android device. They'll say it doesn't matter if you have Android, or it doesn't matter if you have an iPhone or a Samsung. Yeah. It's almost like Samsung is the marketing equivalent of an iPhone, and there are only the two, and then everybody else is kind of a place. So I think it would take something like a Samsung to push that forward, and so I think it has a real chance of succeeding in the hands of Samsung, and it's great that it's being done on Linux.
That's a very good point. A lot of people just call them like Galaxy phones and don't even know it's Android. Like there's quite a few of those people. So that's a good point. I do want to point out one thing that I found kind of amusing was inside the demo video. There was like a minute-long promo of the decks running Ubuntu 16.04. They open up a terminal, and they open up another terminal. And those two makes perfect sense. You got terminals running. They show up HTOP. Okay, cool. Then inside the terminal, they launch Terminator. Kind of redundant to do, but okay, sure. It was like it was great because it was like, hey, let's just make it look Linuxy techy and stuff. That's fine.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I think it's very exciting for Linux, and I'm happy to see it happening on Samsung. I agree with Noah 100%. Number one, what is Apple's competition to this? They have nothing like it right out there, which is proof that Samsung's not only kind of taking it to them on the hardware side recently, but now they're doing it on the software side too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, but isn't that because Apple have already got that convergence there already with their phones and their tablets and their PCs, and everything's interlinked and interconnected and everything just works together?
To a degree. We're not talking as much convergence here as you are talking about, like, they released their new iPad Pro, which dang, that thing is like, I don't know, some obscene amount of money, and everybody's they're basically saying this is your desktop replacement. And I've seen article after article this week saying it's basically an iPad, and it has no ability to replace a desktop at all. There were all these Apple sites and everything else saying I spent a week with it. I couldn't wait to get back to my desktop. This creates a whole new thing, because now you're taking something that's meant to be a desktop, instead of trying to make iOS a desktop, which it does crappy as. You're taking something that's meant to be a desktop and making it a desktop. So I think this has a way more capabilities of succeeding than what Apple has. Apple really has nothing to compete with this.
Also consider this. Linux starts as a very small thing, and then we add features and we layer things on top of it until we build it up to whatever it is we need it to do. Sometimes that's literally, in the case of BusyBox, just essentially a kernel and a basic set of commands. And other times, look at Ubuntu. It's this gigantic suite of things. And so Linux is so modular. Like you said, it really fits the bill for this really, really well, way more than any other attempted competitor ever could.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that they're doing it it's not like they're separate pieces either. You can affect the phone with the Linux desktop approach, and they even showed it where they would open like IntelliJ, so you could do development and do some like compiling and stuff via the phone, so you can have all the benefits of having like direct access of hardware for testing of your Android apps and stuff like that. So like the approaches they're doing is more, it is like basically a true convergence of having one device that does everything.
Yeah, no, think about it like going to your clients and stuff. Maybe it's not quite there yet, but eventually you could go to your clients with a phone, and you'd be like, hey, I need to connect into your server. Do you have a monitor? Because you want a big monitor. You plug into their monitor, and you've got your full computer capability to go into your terminals, to go into their servers, everything right there from a phone.
So it was interesting. I was just having a conversation. The 100th celebration anniversary episode of Ask Noah, a gentleman from the UbiPorts project. Yeah, thank you. There was a gentleman from the UbiPorts project showed up, and he was demoing UbiPorts. And I was talking with the business owner the very next day, and he was explaining about how, even though he's not a technical guy, even though he doesn't know anything about Linux, the concept of having a single device that he could store all of his stuff and have everything there, that really appeals to him. And this is a business guy that has nothing invested in Linux. So I think, yes, it could be cool for geeks, but I think it also could appeal to the wider business community.
Yeah, that's a good point too. So let's move on to the always favorite section for Zeb, and that is the gaming news. And so the first game we're going to talk about is actually called Monstrum. It's a horror game, and it's now available on Linux. And it's one of those games that is like you're walking around a corridor, and it's just you turn around and it scares the crap out of you because there's these big monsters in your face. So I'm not really a horror game person.
Because you cry easy.
I'm not really a horror game person.
You get scared, and then you call me, and then you're like, "Hey, can we talk for a minute? Because I'm scared. I think something's under my bed." And then I tell you to put on the camera so I can check under your bed before you finally fall asleep.
Take 3. I'm not really a horror game person. But anyway, I think Ryan might be. So,
well, I don't scare as easily as Michael, so I like these style of games. I like the survival horror. And this game, by the way, at least when I picked it up, was $3.99 out there on GOG. So you cannot go wrong here. If you buy this and don't like it, you're out a whole $4. So
I can get a Big Mac for $4 and get more enjoyment.
Zeb, how dare you? You haven't? Did you play the game, Zeb?
I have looked at the game and I thought,
but you didn't play it. So how do you know a Big Mac is more enjoyment?
But because I'm looking at the video here and I'm thinking this is Canarium Part 2, and we all know what I thought about Canarium. That went straight back to the shop. I mean, there's not a single thing on this video that's scary. It's a dark and dingy corridor.
Well, it's not just watching it. It's when you play it. There's other games like Alan Wake that doesn't seem like a scary game, but you have like a flashlight, and the only weapon you have is a flashlight, and it's more of like when you're in the experience, it becomes like a scary thing. Like I'll still play these games. Like BioShock is another example. It doesn't seem like a scary game at first, but when you play if you just play a little bit of it, you realize that it's meant to be like a I don't know, like a mental, engulfs you into the experience, and that's when it becomes an issue.
I can understand getting involved in the atmosphere and all the rest of it. But as I said before, this looks exactly like Canarium. And I played Canarium for a solid 45 minutes, and there wasn't one single bit that was scary. I mean, 45 minutes into the game, I expected to have jumped at least 3 or 4 times. So
this one, the action actually happens quite a bit faster than Canarium, and it's not just about you, meaning the monsters start coming after you right away, and the sounds and the environments are very intense. These type of games work the best when they get the music and the sound effects down pat, and the environment where you feel claustrophobic, just like a horror movie, for instance. And they did that very well. And you're on this old ship. There's creaking. There's noises. There's things happening. But right away, your idea in this game is to escape. It's randomly generated which monster. Each monster has kind of a different ability and way of attacking you, and you don't know which one's after you. And your idea is to get to the escape point before the monster kills you. And the monsters have pretty good AI predictions of what you're doing or where you're trying to go to get you there. And I'm telling you right now, Zeb, if you played this game, you put your headphones on, you turn the volume up, you take the lights down, we stream it live, you play this game in that kind of mode in the middle of the night, you will soil your British britches over this game. I'm telling you. It will scare you, Zeb. So for $3.99, it's worth checking out. It's fun. I picked it up. It's a really fun game.
Well, if it's okay with you, I'll stay with my Big Mac.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. But before we go on to the next game, I've got a serious question to ask. Where's Ryan, and what have you done to him?
What are you talking about? I'm right here, man.
But you've given me Skateboarding Birds Coming to Linux to review. And it's gorgeous.
Yeah, exactly. It's
not pixelated. It looks fun. It looks like something you could have enjoy. It's not my type of game, but it's everything about it just looks so stupid. You've got this.
I love it.
You've got this like Monty Python's type red parrot sitting on top of a skateboard, trying to do front wheelies and back wheelies, and I can't think, grinding the turn curves, and
look at you.
Just when it's going to get to fail, it starts flapping its little wings, a little boost. It looks hilarious. So
It's
somebody
awesome.
has definitely done something to Ryan because
I thought I was going to get you with this. I thought you were going to say this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen, and here you appreciated it.
No, it is absolutely stupid, but it looks fun. Not my type of game, but yeah, I could sit there and watch somebody playing this. This is just, and
I'm so
for me,
excited. You can watch me stream it when I get it.
definitely, because for me, this is better than your jelly babies fighting thing. This could
Jelly
be-
babies.
And what I think would be even better is if you could have two birds on the skateboards in the same skate park, and you can whap each other out.
Maybe.
I
You can
love
both
it.
go for the same jump and see who lands it. And the thing I found about it as well is when it crashed at the end of this little video, it doesn't crash and go bouncing around all over the place. It just sort of goes plonk. And you can imagine it going, ouch.
Your description of a Monty Python bird on a skateboard is the greatest. If the developers need to steal that and just put that in the game, the bird, because that just put so many visuals in my head there. Absolutely loved it. Yeah, this is going to be a great game.
Yeah, it's called skatebirds or skateboardings or something. Like that?
Skateboarding birds.
Is it just
Skatebird.
skateboarding? I thought it was skatebird. Yeah.
Now, the actual name of the game is Skatebird.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think this is definitely one of those games where it's so ridiculous. I want to play it. Like,
Yeah.
I've actually been used to. I remember playing like Tony Hawk Pro Skater a long time ago when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And it was like, and also like the Skate series and all this other stuff. And it's kind of interesting. There hasn't been many Skate games in a very long time, or at least any of the big popular ones in a while.
Right.
But like, so I was always wanting to get some more up to date Skate games, and this is awesome because it's a skate game. And when you're doing that, when every time I was like, how's it going to make that jump in the video? And it just cheats and starts flapping.
Flapping this little stupid wing.
It's so awesome. Like, I
No, I know
wanna
you're
play
not
this.
a gamer, but is a skateboarding birds game something that you're like?
I
you know
will
what?
no scope you 1v1. No, I'm just kidding. Here's the thing. The closest I've gotten to gaming in the last week was I downloaded a new game on Android I really like, and I couldn't even tell you what the name of that is. But
Flappy Bird.
but it's
Flappy Bird.
no, it's like a sniper thing that you anyway.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I can't pretend. I'm sorry.
But
We'll get
if you
we're gonna
haven't
get
seen
you
this
there
video for that, you still need to check it out because this game's not out yet. It won't be out for at least like a
Here,
few weeks or so. But
I tell you what I would do. I would totally do a Destination Linux gaming night where we get together and do, like maybe engage with the community and play a game. I'd buy games for that.
yeah,
I'm
we
just-
should,
fun.
we should definitely
Of
do that.
my own volition. Like if I could do it with a bunch of Linux guys, heck yeah. But on my own volition,
Yeah.
no, sorry.
I like that idea.
I think I like that especially because it's basically we're forcing you to play a game and you're accepting it.
Yes. You will like this, Noah.
You will like this game.
So we received a lot of, in our software spotlight, a lot of people are loving this section and the tips and tricks. We're getting a lot of great feedback from people listening saying that they loved these sections here. So one of the things that was interesting is last week we talked about Simple Note, and we received no less than 3 emails talking about how we need to check out, if we like Simple Note, a program called Joplin. Did I do it right there, Michael?
Yep, it's Joplin. Yep.
Okay. So one of the emails is thanks for all the content. And he does say, especially Ryan, always enjoy discussions about productivity tools like the one you had regarding Simple Note in the last show. An app that, from what I see, is one that comes the closest to Evernote alternative is actually Joplin in Linux. Yet I have to hear this app to get brought up on, yet to hear this that actually get brought up on any of the Linux shows out there. Noah is informing me in the notes, which is cracking me up, that he actually added the especially Ryan in there. I thought he really said it. That's brilliant, Noah. That is brilliant. You got me to fall for it. But I did give Joplin a try, and I've actually really, really enjoyed it. Now, I have my own Nextcloud server, so the QO notes is so easy for me to do as well. But I moved a lot of stuff over to Joplin as a backup because it's so simple to use. And Michael, it reminds me a little bit of HackMD.
Yeah,
because you
it
kind of
does a
got
little bit.
that 2 screens and you can use markup language and things in it too. You don't have to, but you can. It's a very, very cool app out there. So
Yeah, I think this Joplin is really cool, and if you haven't seen it or tried it before, they have an app image, so it makes it really easy to try it out. But the way they do the syncing is through a third-party syncing service. So like you provide the syncing service. It could be anything like Dropbox or Nextcloud or whatever. But once you have that, you can even do it with a sync thing if you wanted to. So you do it, or C file with like a local instance or whatever. So it's if you want to do it that way, you got to make sure the syncing is set up perfect, consistently. Otherwise, you can do it more of a local notes thing. And it is a really cool thing because it has support for notebooks and to-dos and all kinds of stuff. And the app image did make it easier for me to try it out because I think that it's one of the easier ways to get an alternative of Evernote. Like for example, Turtle is a fantastic system, and it provides everything that you want. It's like an Evernote alternative, but it is a little bit of a learning curve to get it set up and start using. Right. So this is a much easier way to get started, and I think that that's a great approach as well, especially since they have like the mobile apps and stuff like that. So for iOS and Android. So if you're wanting to have like the full experience, it's a pretty good option for that.
Yeah, this has two-factor authentication. It has encryption options built in. And Noah, I remember when we were talking about Simple Note last week, you said, look, I like it, but it doesn't have ability to organize stuff. So this has the notebooks, which are going to take care of that.
That's very cool. I like it. So all of us know that Linux is a customizable operating system. That's why a lot of us use it, is because we have the ability to craft and mold it in exactly what we want. But a lot of people may not be aware that even the shell is customizable. And there's some powerful shell options that you might want to check out. ZSH, designed to be interactive and incorporates many features of other Unix/GNU Linux shells, such as Bash and TSH and KSH. TCSH is an enhanced C shell and can be used for an interactive logon shell script command processor. And Fish. Oh, I remember the first time I used Fish, and it was life-changing for me. And Fish is one of those shells that you haven't used it, you install it, and essentially it starts to learn how you use the terminal, and then basically it's kind of like Android autocomplete, except it actually works, and will autocomplete your commands, like the entire thing, not just like CD, but let's say you always go into the same directory. Fish will figure that out and suggest that entire string for you. Mm-hmm. Absolutely love Fish shell. I cannot use a system unless it has Fish shell installed, so that has my personal thumbs way up.
Nice.
So one question from the non-techie person in the group here. What damage, if any, can it do, and how would you replace, let's say, Bash with Fish? Do you still end up opening up the terminal and typing sudo apt get install whatever?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, so the short answer to your question is inside of your environment variables is what defines whatever shell loads by default. Now you can always change shells just by typing them, but so worst case scenario, you go back and change it to Bash inside of your environment variables inside of your home directory. But as far as what damage can you do? Nothing. I mean, you might get confused if it's a slightly different shell and it operates slightly different, but no, there's really
Here's what you could do, Zeb, is you could just install it, like you're in Ubuntu, so sudo apt install Fish. And then if you want to switch to it, just type Fish. You don't have to change your environment permanently at this point.
Yeah.
And then you can use it. And then if you want, you can shut down your terminal, reopen it, and it'll go back to your normal Bash. Then when you decide you love it, because you will, then you can change it in the environment, and it will be permanent.
Well, if I go everything you just said, because I've just done it.
Everything you just said is technically correct, but I will say that it took me a long time to switch to Fish because before I had set it as default. The thing that Fish does really well is when you're not thinking about being in command mode and you're just trying to get something done and you're trying to get it done fast, you would not really think to switch shells. And that's where Fish really comes into its own, is helping you out and saving that just a little bit of time and being available and saying, here's what you want to do, boss. Go Yukon straight or whatever it is you do, and I'll handle all your shell commands.
Yeah.
So let me paint a picture for you. We were out to dinner with Noah at Southeast Linux Fest. And if you guys ever get to go, definitely go, because it's amazing. But what happens is during lunchtime, a huge crowd forms around Noah's booth of about 5,000 billion people. And they all want to go to lunch with Noah. So we're all sitting at this long table. And Noah's like, hey, Ryan, have you ever heard of Fish? And I think we were eating at the time or whatever, and everybody's talking. I'm like, what is he talking about? he's like, have you tried to use fish? And it's like a new shell. You need to give it a try, whatever. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm like, I must be misunderstanding. He certainly didn't say fish. So I go to Michael and I'm like, what was that thing he was talking about? And Michael's like, fish. And I'm like, FISH. He's like, yes. So I go home and I try it, and I absolutely loved it. It does help.
You can't go back.
Yeah, it's way more useful. And I was curious, Noah, when you go to like a client's, clients that you have and things like that, do you install it there, or do you only use it for personal stuff?
I only use it for personal. The reason is we have, and when it depends a bit on the size of your company, but Altispeed has grown to the point that we document everything we do, because there's no guarantee that the same person is going to be back there twice. And part of that documentation is every piece of software that we put onto a computer past stock has to be documented, so that we know to be able to look and say, well, this thing isn't working. What else is installed that could possibly conflict? And so that would be one more thing that we would have to document and stuff. So I have Fish on my laptop, but I almost never install it at a client, unless it's a client I have a personal relationship with, and I know that they're in there playing with it, or that I'm going to be the one. Yeah. But other than that, no, we don't.
Gotcha. Michael, do you use, like, I had someone reach out, really nice one, telling me I need to use ZSH. I went and I installed it. Apparently there are a bunch of, it's kind of like i3. You can take other people's configs and stuff. But honestly, I just couldn't get into it. I was just like, I guess I just don't use the terminal in that way enough that it matters. Have you tried any of these, and which one's your favorite?
Yeah, I've tried ZSH and Fish, and also Bash, of course. And I think that Fish is probably the most useful as far as like someone who's not really like command line driven, because you can easily transition to Fish because it's very similar, but at the same time it adds extra features to get you more interested in using the command line. So then like ZSH is really good, and it's a nice, they both have their own benefits, and they both have the ability to do like configs, like nice to install configs and stuff like that. ZSH is more tailored to like the big elaborate config setup. But I think Fish is probably, I think one of the things that Noah said about the Fish is where it's like automatically, like it gets used to what you're doing. And if you do a lot of things, like I will run the same command with different variables so often that the fact that I can just hit tab and it just gives it to me is such a great experience, because you don't have to worry about like if you type a little bit of the letters, you can then occasionally get to it after a certain amount of tab completes. But when you start doing Fish and you just type in like 2 letters and then this whole huge string comes in, it's fantastic.
It's derp learning.
It's derp learning. That's exactly what it is.
Well done.
So that's it for this week, and thanks for watching this episode. And Ryan, you have a message for our listeners?
Well, just a big thank you to each and every one of you for supporting us and by watching and listening to Destination Linux. Obviously, the big news last week with Noah joining the show, we couldn't be more happy that Destination Linux has grown and that we could even bring in talent like Noah out there.
Exactly.
So I think it's just awesome, and all that support that you give us allow us to continue to expand the show, bring in new talent, bring in new guests, and continue to bring you the content that you love. And of course, speaking of love, we love our patrons who financially help support this show, and you can become one and watch this fiasco live for just $1, and that's darn near free. So you might as well go
see the worst that we have to offer for just almost a little more than 99 cents.
Exactly.
Or pay nothing and get the published show that has none of the screw ups.
Yeah, and who wants that? You want the screw ups.
You want the screw ups.
That's the funny part.
You also want to come into the chat room and then mess with us as we screw up. That works too.
Yeah, because sometimes they get us to stump. Some of the times you hear us like pausing and we don't, is because somebody has typed something in the chat that is ridiculously funny and trolling us.
Yeah.
So
or if you ever see us,
we shouldn't have read it, but we have to. Yeah.
Yeah. If someone's talking and then one of the other hosts just randomly laughs for no reason, that's why. It's the chat room.
It's because, yeah. So whether you're a patron or not, and we would love you to become a patron, you can send us an email to let us know what you think, any burning questions you've got, and we've got numerous methods that you can do that with. So on email, you can send it to comments@destinationlinux.org. You can drop us a note on the bottom of the video once it's posted. You can ask us a question on the Patreon page, or you can go to destinationlinux.org/contact, where Michael has been able to give us a whole host of Telegram groups and Discord and Google Plus and Twitter and Mastodon and
keep going. There's about 9,000.
Well, yeah, because I was just going to say, I always want to call it diaper because I can never say diaspora. So I'm sure somebody will come up with a new one there called diaper just for me. So yeah, please send in your questions and your emails. You can see how much we enjoy reading them out, and it does make very good interactive sections of the show for us.
Could you imagine social media called diaper? What is it called when you send a message? I filled my diaper. I just filled my diaper. Where did you come up with that?
It just sounded like diaspora. I can never say it properly.
You just said it perfectly.
The diaper doesn't have an S.
Wow. Anyway, so if you're interested in learning more about that, you can go to destinationlinux.org/contact. But also remember to keep liking that smash button and to share the show on social media. And I said that one that time without skipping, and I had to stop and point that out. Anyway,
somebody trolled you in Twitter over that. Every word they had.
Exactly. Perfect. I had a bunch of Anyway, so if you want to help share the show, you can do that on social media, and just try to say that right now. Share. I just did it again. I just messed up.
Won't.
Share it on social media. 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 Michael can't talk.
Okay, cheater. He's cheated. There, we're not even. I'm going to cut that part out. Anyway,
you can fill your diaper to Michael on Diaper or Diaper social app.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, sure. Why not? You can also fill your brains at Das Geek channel if you want to. So anyway, so that's the end of the show for 96. Everybody have a great week, and remember the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.